Welcome to another episode of either your least favorite or favorite series on my channel, Worst Rappers in the Game. And today we are going to be looking at Omar Pinero. I believe that's how you pronounce it, I'm not too sure. Do I really care? Not really. Also known as Smokepurpp, the man who blesseth my trap. To get an opinion of his music, I listened to his Up Now F Next project, which I can't say the real name of because, you know, limited ads. His Deadstar mixtape, and all of his SoundCloud singles, so I've went through pretty much everything that I can find by this guy. Now before we start this video, I really quickly want to say, if you guys haven't followed me on Twitter yet, I'd really appreciate you doing that, because that's probably the best way to get notified about my videos coming out, because I know YouTube aren't very reliable with that. So if you want to be reliably notified, go follow me on Twitter under the handle at CDTVProductions. But with all that being said, guys, is Smokepurpp one of the worst rappers in the game? This is CDTVProductions, and let's find out.
I don't want friends, I want Audis. Smoking on booth and it's my weed. I check the bitch like I'm Mari. Sorry, bitch, I don't say sorry.
And as we always do, for part 1, we're going to be looking at his voice and delivery. Straight away, all I have to say is that Purpp's voice really wasn't as bad as I expected at all. Because he worked very closely with Lil Pump, I don't know why, but I expected his voice to be kind of in a similar vein to Pump's, but they don't really have voices that are that similar. Like, pretty much the most I can say about Purpp's actual voice is that it's pretty normal. On tracks like Big Bucks and This Way That Way, there's no other way to describe his voice than just perfectly fine. However, this segment also includes delivery, and that's actually the big one. How they use their voice is probably even more important than how their voice actually sounds. So, as with everything, there's some stuff that I like about Smokepurpp's delivery, and there's some stuff that I don't like about it. Let's start with the tracks that I really heavily dislike his delivery on. One of those would be the track Johnny. His delivery just straight up irritates me on this track. He manages to sound confused, yet somehow almost condescending at the same time.
All it go, my pinky ring. I don't know you a stain. I don't.
Just a horrible track in my opinion. Then there's songs such as Fingers Blue, and this annoys me because it could have been such a good track. I loved the beat, Travis was great on it, but Purpp's delivery is so downbeat that the first half is just kind of a drag. Travis honestly should have done the hook on this song in my opinion. You guys might disagree with me, but what one sounds more interesting to you guys? This?
Till my fingers blue. Till my fingers blue. I like counting hundreds till my fingers blue.
Or this?
Till my fingers blue. I like counting hundreds till my fingers blue.
I know which one I prefer. That's the issue with a lot of Purpp tracks. He just doesn't sound that interested in what he's rapping about. Other great examples of this are Ski Mask, No Smoke, and Walk Hard. And now that brings me to one of the main things that I want to talk about, which is when he uses autotune, which seems to be something that he's been doing a little bit more recently. And I'd say actually around 70% of the time, I pretty much enjoy his delivery with it. There are some bad ones, like the song R.I.P. Max, where his vocals are literally drowned out by the pitch correction, or songs like Phone, where his delivery with the autotune just really isn't that good. But then there's the good tracks. One of my favorite songs by him, called Topic, uses autotune really effectively, and it's almost used in a kinda Travis Scott-esque way.
On the topic now, yeah.
That kind of noise gating effect he has on his vocals throughout the song to make them kind of warble, I guess that's a word, like that, sounds really nice. And he actually does this a few times throughout his Deadstar mixtape. There is a few bits of experimentation with autotune on there. I really like how he uses autotune on the song To the Moon as well. Honestly, I could genuinely see Smokepurpp becoming a good atmospheric autotune rapper in the future if he continues going down this road. I actually prefer most of his melodic tracks over his rapping tracks. Overall, I'm gonna give Purpp a 6 out of 10 for his vocals. I have no complaints about how his actual natural voice sounds, and I see a lot more potential in the future for him than I do for his counterpart Lil Pump. If Purpp keeps trying to improve, I could see him being an artist who I enjoy vocally in the future. And on to our second segment, we are going to be talking about his flow. Now we get into the fun part, the part that I always like to talk about a lot in this series, and that is the flow. And that is because it's a very important part to look at. A good flow could make or break a track. And before we even start with it, let's just straight away mention the song that it's obvious that I'm gonna mention, and that song is Kilo.
My neck with the brick, I put that on my game. Boy, you ain't gay, but you probably a stain. You niggas want features, you niggas is lames. I need me some change, I need me your chain. My neck with a kilo, I feel like Sub-Zero. My bitches is emo, my shirt with a kilo.
That is the best flow that Purpp has ever used in his music for me so far. It just runs together so nicely. Honestly, I don't know if he can top that one in the future, but we'll have to wait and see. There were also other songs that I did enjoy his flow on too. For example, his flow on How That Make You Feel just made the track sound so much harder. He flowed really nice on there.
How that make you feel? Drop 45 in the bed, go splat. Walk in the party and the bitches don't snap. What? Make a bitch sit on my lap. Real. I got that Glock on my lap. Standing in the kitchen with a big, we were not crack.
I just enjoy cadences like that because it helps add a lot more life to the song, despite Smokepurpp's voice not sounding particularly interesting on these tracks. I also noticed that I quite enjoyed some of his more melodic flows over his rapping flows. Examples of this are tracks like Different Color Molly and To the Moon. So there's definitely a few things about his flows that I like, but there is one main issue I have with a lot of his rapping flows, and that is a lot of the time when he's rapping, his flows just don't really stand out in any way. Listen to the verses of songs like Drop or Krispy Kreme, and it is hard to say that the flows sound special in any way. And if you couple one of Purpp's less interesting flows with when he uses a less interesting delivery, that can result in a sleep-inducing track. Now, I'm not saying it happened a lot, but there was at least 5 tracks that he has that almost put me to sleep. One thing I also noticed in a few tracks is that he likes to do this thing which is becoming more and more popular now, which is starting your verse with the exact same flow that you just did on the hook. I personally hate that. Like, I've started to see it so much recently, because if you do it too much, it kind of comes off as if you weren't creative enough to come up with a different flow. So you just said fuck it and essentially continued the hook's flow. I mean, listen to this hook on Count Up and you'll notice the flow is the same when the verse starts for 4 or 5 bars.
She say I'm an asshole, girl, I know. I don't want a pussy, baby girl, I want it though. Then you catch a Uber, girl, I gotta say you.
Once you start to notice that in more than a few songs, it comes off as a little uncreative. So I did have a lot of criticisms, and I think they were quite fair criticisms, but he's not the worst rapper in this segment that we have seen in this series. He shows on some tracks that he's perfectly capable of flowing nicely. He just needs to show that a bit more. I feel like Purpp lies right in the middle here. I'm gonna give him a 5 out of 10. Again, this is something he can easily improve if he really wants to, but I guess we'll see where his flow goes in the future. Oh, and for part 3, it's that fun one, it's the lyrics. You know, some people who watch this series criticize me for, and I quote here, only judging these rappers by their lyrics, which is kind of a stupid statement, because lyrics is one out of the 5 segments in this series. It's a minor part of a bigger picture. It's just here for that rare occasion when we do find a lyrical rapper. This isn't one of those occasions. It's perfectly fine that Purpp isn't a very lyrical rapper, but it can make a lot of his tracks sound very similar because there's not a lot of lyrical variation. Now, you've probably heard that quite a few times in this series before, so what I'm gonna do to make this one a little different is look through the projects that I've heard from him and kind of describe to you guys what the lyrical themes in each of his projects are, so you can see that they're not that varied. Let's start with Up Now, F Next. I hate calling it that, but I pretty much have to. YouTube is forcing my hand here. Because it's the shortest project that he has. Now, only being 4 tracks long, at least it's only 4 tracks long on that piff, he'd probably be able to put a lot of content into it without much filler, right? Well, the first track is about shooting people, not presented in an incredibly creative way. The second track is about having money. I'm sure that's something we've never heard before. The third track has a somewhat fun concept about him diluting codeine syrup and selling it to make a bigger profit, but he doesn't really stick to that story. And track 4, I'm pretty sure, is just an experiment to fit in as many rap cliches in the short time that Purpp raps for on it. So yeah, nothing particularly interesting there. So your next question must be, is anything different covered on Deadstar then? Well, looking through the track list here, it talks about being famous, wanting nice foreign cars, street life, getting money, etc. So yeah, not much unique there either. Although I think the biggest criticism I can make is for the song called R.I.P. Max. It's a song apparently dedicated to someone close to Purpp called Max, who died in a drug-related death. But you wouldn't know that listening to the lyrics until the last 4 lines of the verse. What should be a touching tribute in some way comes off as a cheap attempt at having an emotional track on your album. Let me read you some of the other lyrics from the verse on this song. In fact, I'll read you how this verse starts off. How about this set of lines? Gucci flops, flexing in my Gucci flops, then she give me top, got her boyfriend wanna talk. That's on a track that is supposedly a tribute to someone that has died. Do you really think that's an appropriate time to be talking about stealing someone else's girl? I'm not joking when I say literally only the last 4 lines mention Max. So is there anything that I did like about his lyrics? Well, he did have some funny and kinda creative lines occasionally that did make me crack a smile. For example, I thought this line on Stretch That Money was alright.
You don't wanna be 'cause I'm a fry, like a pan, boy.
There are at least a few lines like that, and whilst he doesn't really rap about anything interesting, he can at least stick to the topic of what a song is about most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. I think it's fair to give Purpp a 3 out of 10 for this segment. I get that lyrics aren't the focus of the current generation of rappers, but it's still a large part of their music, and it deserves to be criticised, and Purpp isn't too special lyrically. And for part 4, we're going to be looking at his beat selection. And like pretty much all the segments so far in this video, I have somewhat mixed feelings about the beats that Purpp chooses. One thing that became noticeable to me as I listened to more of his songs is that he really likes to stick to a particular type of beat for quite a while. For example, on his Up Now EP, I'm just gonna call it Up Now, let's just forget about the second half of that title. Pretty much every single beat is just a piano beat with some trap drums and bass. A couple of the beats have a few different sounds, but they're really not that different at all. It's only a 4-song long EP, and pretty much all the beats sound very similar throughout it. Although I will say the beat for That Way This Way is really good.
Ooh, wait, what? Hey, bitch, I'm on the block. Yeah, wait this way, wait this block. Yeah, bitch, I'm on the block.
There is a fine line between beats for an album having a theme and having most of the beats sound the same, and I think that's a line that Purpp hasn't really found the balance between yet. Because for almost the first half of his Deadstar mixtape, this happens too. 7 of the first 9 tracks on this tape are produced by Ronnie J. Now, I don't have any particular issues with Ronnie J, he's a perfectly capable producer, but a lot of the types of beats he makes are just not for me. And honestly, again, that bass boosted sound makes a lot of his beats sound very similar. When all the melodies on your beat are overshadowed by the bass kind of becomes the main melody, and it's very hard to make that sound different. It honestly gets super old on Deadstar. By the time I got to the track No Safety, I was sick of that bass boosted sound. Speaking of that, another beat I absolutely hate is the one for Geek A Lot. That beat for some reason just has this nauseating siren throughout it, and it just sounds, what's another word for awful, because that doesn't quite describe it. It sounds abysmal. So that's most of what I didn't like, but I won't lie, he has some hard ass beats. For example, his most recent SoundCloud single, Big Bucks, actually has a dope beat, and that's the type of Ronnie J beat that I like, because the bass is noticeable, but it doesn't overpower the rest of the beat.
I count big bucks, keep a thing tough. We could get up, nigga, we could get up. Yeah, chopper leave a nigga doing sit-ups. That's your whole
It's a nice, energetic instrumental. However, the hard beats aren't the ones I like the most from Purpp. You could probably guess what kind of songs I like from him the most so far, but I actually like it a lot more when he uses those more mellow, vibey beats. I feel like he makes his best songs over these types of instrumentals, and that's why I think the production is much better on the second half of Deadstar, or on tracks like Glock in My Bands.
No such thing as real. I don't want no friends, I want no friends. Rather buy a Benz, don't.
And of course, I think Fingers Blue is one of the best produced tracks he has. I really like most things about that track except Purpp's delivery. So overall, I'm feeling a 5.5 out of 10 for the beats here. Like I said, there are some that I love, and I really enjoy when he uses more mellow production, but there's so many that I don't enjoy. Like I said, in his projects, the beats seem to stick to a theme too much, and I haven't mentioned this, but some of his beats on his SoundCloud singles are awful. Not all of them, but some of them are very bad. Overall, not awful production, but it's alright. And now for part 5, we're going to be talking about my overall enjoyment of Purpp's music as a whole. So overall, how much did I enjoy Smokepurpp's music? Well, it wasn't too bad. It's definitely not the best artist that I've listened to on this list, but he is not the worst. I could definitely see him doing big things in the future if he keeps trying to evolve and trying to improve his sound. Deadstar was a project that I found to be pretty bad and boring in the first half, but then the second half of that project, it really showed me that Smokepurpp does have some potential. And surprisingly for me, the auto-tune tracks were the ones that I liked the most. As for his SoundCloud singles, I'm just looking at them right now. They are pretty hit and miss. Most of them were either bad or just okay, but then there were highlights like Glock in My Bands, Always, and How That Make You Feel. I really enjoyed those ones. Now I do have to say, whilst it does sound like I'm praising him quite a bit here, he does have a long way to go before I fully enjoy his music. He's not awful, but he's not great either. He just sits right in the middle for me. I still feel that he's trying to find his footing, and I don't think he has any particular defining sound yet. There is not a specific Smokepurpp sound. He's definitely trying a lot of different things here and there. So overall, I think I'm gonna give Purpp a 5.5 out of 10 again for enjoyment. His affiliation with Pump set my expectations really low, but I was somewhat proven wrong with what I heard. Hopefully, if I revisit this episode in the future, which is something I plan to do with a lot of episodes, so look out for that soon, after he releases more music, hopefully that score can go up. So overall, Smokepurpp has scored 25 out of 50. The first ever rapper to get exactly 50% on this list. This places him on the 8th spot out of 19 on our list, just above Future and below Young Thug. The full list will be in the description below. I think his score perfectly describes how I feel about him. As a rapper, he's just stuck in the middle right now, but he really does have that potential to improve. I didn't dislike his music as much as I thought I might, but there still wasn't many things that defined him as an artist. So yeah, I guess I can respect Purpp a little for not being completely awful, and for being quite a bit better than his counterpart, Lil Pump. Well guys, that's going to be it for the video today. I hope you enjoyed seeing another installment in this series, because I know a lot of you guys absolutely love this series, and I always try to bring it out as much as I can. This is also the first one with my new camera and my new lighting, so hopefully it looks really good. Remember to follow me on Twitter under the name @CDTVProductions, best way to get notified about new videos and to interact with me. So that's all I've got to say for today guys. Gonna go edit this now. It's gonna be a pain because the raw audio was 30 minutes. But thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys all in the next one, and this is CDTV Productions, signing out.